And people do care, and they continue to care, and it's a lot of people helping us that's created the home here that we have for rescuing wild horses today.
Hello, Radiant viewers, and welcome to Vegetarianism, the Noble Way of Living. On today's episode, we invite you on an adventure to Shingletown in Northern California, USA. Nestled in this sparsely populated small town is a picturesque sanctuary. Here, the horses and burros run free.
The horses have available to them 5,000 acres. The sanctuary owns almost half of it. The rest of it is available for their use through lease lands and absentee owners that like the horses. The people who bought the land but don't live there don't mind the horses being on it.
And about how many horses do you have currently?
There's close to 300, and we have some saddle horses as well.
In this first of a two-part feature, we will be visiting the Wild Horse Sanctuary. Founded by Dianne and Ted Nelson, the sanctuary has provided a safe forever home for rescued wild horses and burros for 27 years.
Dianne, would you tell us how this all began, this wonderful horse sanctuary that you have here? How did it all start?
Well, in the late 70s, my family and I were gathering horses under contract for the Forest Service, and at the end of one of our contracts, they were going to shoot and bury 80 head of horses that we had gathered, and that was just more than we could stomach, and so we said, we'll take them. And at the time, we just loved horses, and we had always had horses. The wild horses have been used by our ancestors for hundreds of years in this country, and before that all over the world, and these were really sturdy, young, healthy horses, and it was just unconscionable that they should just be shot. So we took them. Only finding pasture and a place to put that many horses wasn't as easy as we thought. One thing led to another, and we contacted groups that were already established to protect the wild horses. And when people learned what was happening, they started coming forward to help. And one of the groups suggested sponsorship. And so they got us our first sponsors. And people do care, and they continue to care. And it's a lot of people helping us that's created the home here that we have for rescuing wild horses today.
It is estimated that around 30,000 wild horses are still roaming the western public lands of the United States. Every year, however, some of these wild horses are taken from their natural settings and rounded up by the government in order to manage the population. Some are sent for public adoption. A fortunate few have been rescued by refuges like the Wild Horse Sanctuary and allowed to live out their lives in a new home with free surroundings.
When you think about millions of acres that belongs to the American public, the forage that's out there, over 70% of all the forage on public lands goes to livestock. 25% approximately to wildlife, less than 5% to wild horses. And yet if you went to the government, you will hear them say, oh, we had to round them up because they were starving. Literally every horse that has come to us has either come from a confinement situation, which for a wild horse is like a prison sentence to any of us, and sometimes it would be destruction. It can be dangerous to have a wild horse that doesn't want to be in confinement. He might hurt himself, or he might hurt someone else just because he's wild. So someone will call me and say, this horse needs to be turned out to have a natural life the way he should have always had. So sometimes like that. Today we had some horses come from Southern California. They're various individual rescues, because if there's a report that goes in that a horse is in a, say, an unsafe situation for himself or not being cared for properly, sometimes people never get the horses tamed to where they can have their feet trimmed. Well, if they're out ranging like they are on the sanctuary, their feet stay worn down naturally the way they would in the wild. But in a domestic situation, if they're just in a pen or a small corral, they don't travel enough, and so their feet will grow. It can actually cause deformations that become problematic for the horse and painful. So a situation like that, if the person isn't taking care of the horse, or maybe he's not getting enough food, or just all sorts of different situations, or even mistreatment. Some people don't understand the nature of the wild horse and have actually harmed them physically, and so they are taken away. Actually, it's no different than you see with dogs and cats or other animals. The same kinds of things happen with horses. They're just bigger animals, and so it's sad, but it's nice that we're here to take as many as we can.
In the vast wild horse sanctuary, feeding the horses is one of the most important daily tasks. We joined Dianne to see what mealtime is like for these vegan equine beauties.
We are just behind our barn, and this is one of the feeding areas that we distribute the hay to the horses in. And Lightning is here waiting anxiously for his daily ration with two of his wives. They came to us recently from the wild. They were captured by the Bureau of Land Management, so they have freeze brands on them. You saw those on their necks. But they had a life in the wild, and they lost the freedom of the millions of acres that typically belong to the wild horses. But we give them a few thousand acres, and they're happy just to be here. And it's a little muddy because we had a long, wet winter, but the grass will come again. And we just try to give as natural a life as we can to as many as we can. It's they have room to roam, but the feed on our 5,000 acres is not enough. So we have to distribute hay on a regular basis, and they know it. That's why they're here waiting. They're waiting very patiently.
Many volunteers help to distribute hays to the horses.
We either feed a grass hay, a grain hay, or we feed alfalfa. Alfalfa, 20% protein. And actually, a straight alfalfa diet is not healthy for horses. It's hard on their kidneys because it is a lot of protein. But when you're mixing it with other foods, you can feed less of it. Grasses are what they would normally eat, so. And then grain hay has like oats in it or wheat, depending on what you've got, but they need a certain amount of protein.
Horses are highly social herd animals. Young horses find one another and form groups called bachelor bands, or in the females' cases, bachelorette bands. They live together in serene contentment, and after fully grown, they move on to create their own families.
What is the life like for just one horse without other companionship of other horses and just people?
Personally, I would never have one horse by itself. They're very social. In the wild, if you saw a horse by itself, you'd know something was drastically wrong. Either he was injured, he couldn't keep up, he'd been forced out. I like it when people have at least two horses. It's just not a natural thing for horses to be alone. They're extremely social. I think even in the racehorse industry, I mean, the horses are kept in boxes, and sometimes they'll even have a goat as a companion animal. You've heard stories like that. Just some companion animal, but typically they would always form families. You've got the harems, which is the male and his wives, and then the bachelor bands.
Horses that came here that had been isolated or by themselves, and they got here to Horse Sanctuary, they ended up having friends. Have you seen some kind of transformation there?
Oh, yeah. Typically, I won't release a horse by itself. Sometimes they come to us as an individual rescue. Some dire circumstance where an owner just was either forced out. So they come as an individual, and if I turn him out by himself, he'll want to go join up with another family. So now when one horse comes in by itself, I take another horse at the same time. So at least there's two of them. And if you put two horses together in a large field, they will immediately just be happy. And you see it even in the saddle horses. And the two latest arrivals will be fast friends. And I mean, it happens so fast. It's like we went to bring one in for grooming the other day, And his friend was like right at the gate whinnying and wanting to come. So it's like, okay, well, you just come with us, because they just don't want to be separated once they've made that friendship, especially if they didn't have it before and now they have it. Now it almost becomes the anxiety issues when they're separated, because I finally have a friend. Don't take him away. Please don't take him away. And so it's comforting to see them have a good life.
So people who might be hearing this broadcast and they might have just one horse at home, what would you recommend? Can they team up with people and have visiting time and something like that so that they become more social with other horses?
Correct. In barn settings, the horses at least can see each other and talk to each other, and so you're limited in the city when you have to board a horse. In the country, we call it companion animals. Sometimes a really good riding horse, I think the problems that develop from anxiety issues or other behavioral issues, it's important, and you're actually doing yourself and the horse a service to keep them mentally happy. And it just makes a better life. They've got a better even relationship with you when you want to do something with it. Sometimes horses will bond with other animals, but I think they need each other, just like we need each other.
During a discussion with our association members in May 2000, Supreme Master Ching Hai spoke about the sentient and loyal nature of horses and how they thrive on love much like we do.
You have to teach the kid to be more gentle and more love, and the horse listen better. They like love, and they also listen to love.
They're very emotional, and they have feelings like people.
Yeah, horses, they respond better with love. Every animal is the same, mostly the same. If you treat them with love, it's better for you also. They're very faithful. In old time, there are many stories that when the horse rider die, and the owner die, they go to the tomb of the owner and sit there or stand there and don't eat anything until they die also. Very, very faithful, very intelligent. Horse and dogs are famous for being very loyal. They're almost human. So it's just better we treat them with utmost respect and love. Yeah, horse is very beautiful. I love them.
Luckily, the animals at the Wild Horse Sanctuary are indeed in the care of loving, good hands.
It's a privilege being here at the Wild Horse Sanctuary, and it's a real privilege to be able to work with Dianne and Ted. They're really great people. All the interns that come, they have nothing but good things to say about them, and we're accepted like family, each and every one of us. Dianne and Ted have done wonderful things here on the ranch, and I'd like to thank them for all of that, and all the volunteers and the organizations that help support it.
For more information about the Wild Horse Sanctuary, please visit www.wildhorsesanctuary.org. Thank you for your company on today's Vegetarianism, the Noble Way of Living. Next Tuesday, May 31st, we will continue our visit with founders Dianne and Ted Nelson and the elegant resident equines of the Wild Horse Sanctuary. Coming up now is Between Master and Disciples, here on Supreme Master Television. Wishing you a fruitful week in the blessed care of darling animal companions.
For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/VEG